Coming up in the Bahamas tonight, a scare for passengers on board JetBlue this afternoon. Good Friday is observed today. We'll hear how Christians commemorated the day. And look who has the best kept yard. The Bahamas Tonight, the National Report, starts now.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This portion of the news brought to you by BTC Everyday.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Keishla Adderley. Thanks for joining us. It was a scary flight into the capital for passengers on board a JetBlue flight this afternoon. Reports are that the flight from Washington, D.C. experienced landing gear problems during its approach into the Lynden Pinling International Airport. Minister of Transport and Aviation Glenys Martin gave this account of the episode.
I'm advised by Civil Aviation Department that at about 3:30 this evening, the pilot on board JetBlue Embraer 190 with 97 souls on board advised Bahamas Air Traffic Services at the Lynden Pinling International Airport of mechanical difficulties being encountered with its landing gear while in the area over Rose Island. The aircraft was en route to Nassau from Washington, D.C. All emergency procedures were activated at LPIA in anticipation of the landing. The aircraft landed at 4:30 p.m. on runway 1432, apparently with its nose on the runway, indicating some degree of landing gear failure. Our Flight Standards Inspectorate is on the scene as we speak, conducting its investigation. Runway 1432 has been temporarily closed and air traffic is being directed to runway 927. We are grateful from what we're hearing that there have been no injuries and no loss of life.
In other news tonight, today is Good Friday, one of the holiest days on the Christian calendar. It's the day observed by millions of Christians around the world as the day when Jesus Christ was crucified and buried. Well, today our news team visited several churches as Christians marked the occasion.
Churches were filled this Good Friday as thousands of Bahamians flocked to their doors to take in the message. At Zion Baptist Church, Reverend T.G. Morrison delivered a stirring sermon as he drew comparisons about how Jesus was rejected during his lifetime and how Christians, through their lack of faith, continue to do the same today. He says Jesus was murdered because of a conspiracy by political and spiritual authorities.
The incursion of God, the loving, intentional actions of God were met with rejection. From the moment of his birth, he was rejected.
Morrison charged that Jesus continues to be rejected today in the same ways the chief priests rejected him when Pilate asked if he should crucify their king, and they responded, "We have no king but Caesar." He says there is an anti-God movement in the 21st century and that some in the Christian community are not helping to do away with it.
Christians and Christian leaders, in the face of the pressure of the world, instead of standing firm and standing up for Jesus Christ by our words and actions, we are saying we have no king but Caesar.
Morrison says the Christian church has become a place for people to flaunt what they have, urging the congregation to return to basics. He further charged that every time Christians go to gambling houses, they are telling God they do not trust him to provide for them.
Every time, brothers and sisters, you compromise your standard for a couple of dollars from a man or a woman, you are saying, I cannot trust you, Almighty God. But brethren, David was able to prophesy. He said, I was young and now I'm old, and I've never seen the righteous forsaken, nor their seed begging bread.
Morrison implored churchgoers to once again turn their attentions and renew their faith in God. Cleopatra Murphy, ZNS Network News.
Well, today also marks the end of 40 days of Lent, Jesus Christ's temptation by the devil in the desert coming to an end. And on Sunday, his resurrection will be marked as Easter Sunday is observed. Anglican Bishop, the Right Reverend Laish gave this reflection.
You don't celebrate such an awful event, but we commemorate it. On Good Friday, Jesus bore his cross, was humiliated, and hung on the cross and died, paying the price for our sin. And so every Good Friday, we remember that, because you see, in his suffering and dying, he conquered human suffering, he conquered physical death, and he conquered sin, thereby making it possible for us to not fear those things and to draw even closer to God. And so, because of the benefits which flow from his death, that's why it's called Good Friday. A better name for it might be Bad Friday or Suffering Friday, but we call it Good Friday because the benefits which flow from his act of suffering and death, those benefits are tremendous.
Scores gathered at the Church of God Convention Center on Joe Farrington Road last night for the church's 95th National Convention. Under the theme, We Are One in Purpose, Promise, and Potential, Thursday's service was dedicated to the women of the church. Prime Minister Christie was among those in attendance. He told the congregation never to underestimate the value of leadership. He also said the church must understand its role, especially given the challenges facing the country.
The church is challenged to recognize the changing face of our country, challenges to our people, them being more and more preoccupied with their own personal challenges, faith diminished and diminishing, an understanding of the relationship with God and its purpose and its meaning to one's life is not being shared with as many young people as in our time, so to speak.
Now, as a result of those changes, the Prime Minister says Christians must learn to adapt in order to bring more people back to church. This, he says, will require them to go beyond the walls of the church.
You must understand that young people today, from the 3 years old, are now talking the language of computers, information technology, being able to talk to them in a language they understand, being able to answer the question, why are they diminishing in numbers in our churches? And what is it that we ought to do? So we can't hide and we can't not understand that there are changes going on in this world that is hostile to our beliefs and in our view harmful to what undergirds our country.